So, is Biden pulling out of Afghanistan? Yes and no. At first, I was going to give him props for pulling out of Afghanistan. We've been there 20 years, same with Iraq. We've been yo-yoing the troop level ever since we invaded. Between the Bush administration, the Obama, the Trump administration, and Biden administration. Obama and Trump promised to get out. Bush never promised. Obama and Trump promised to get out, and they never did. Obama would yo-yo it constantly between years and even months. The troop level would go down, then it would go up by a few thousand, go down a few thousand, go up a few thousand. And same thing with Trump. He would yo-yo it as well, or he would just move troops to different areas. So he wouldn't pull out of the Middle East. He was just kind of rearranging where they're at. Now, what Biden's doing right now is what Trump had in mind. A withdrawal of U.S. troops, but not U.S. private security contractors. Now, why is this significant? Well, in Afghanistan, there's about 2,500 plus boots on the ground troops. These are people actively engaged in looking for combat and insurgents. Odd to call them insurgents when you're in another country. You're technically the insurgent. But nevertheless, those are what they refer to as the troops. Now, what is really going on is that, yes, they're going to pull their troops out, but they're still going to be around almost, I've seen instances between 35,000 to 50,000 private security contractors in Afghanistan alone contracted by the U.S. government. Now, people say, well, what is private business? Well, yes, they are a private corporation and private business, but they're contracted out by the U.S. government, so they are liable. The contract holder is currently breaking international law. So no, I was going to give, Biden props, and I was giving Trump props for the longest time. But when I saw that Biden is merely following the Trump protocol, I'd always thought Trump wanted a full-scale withdrawal. Same with Biden, but as it turns out, not necessarily so. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg of withdrawal. We're still going to have a number of bases there. It's just the private security contractor and forces. That's not counting, truck drivers delivering fuel, the workers on bases where these private security contractors are. This is just counting the troop level. So there is a significant amount of U.S. security forces, CIA operatives, and special forces and special operations in Afghanistan and Iraq alone. So what is the moral of this? Well, the U.S. government lied again. They told a half-truth. They spoke out the side of their mouth. On the one hand, they're saying they're withdrawing, but they're not really doing it. And I think this speaks to the larger picture of U.S. imperialism, because we've done the same thing. If you look back, a perfect example of this actually, look back to Vietnam. A president would say, we're getting out of Vietnam. Kennedy would say it, or, Kennedy didn't have a chance to say it. Lyndon B. Johnson would say it. Nixon would say it. And they never did. They would say, oh, we're getting ready to pull out. And then, I don't want to say deep state, but a deep state official, usually a high-ranking official, long seated position in the White House or in the military-industrial complex. So, oh, no, we can't because X, Y, and Z. Because, there will be, you name it, massive insurgents and slaughtering of civilians, or, whatever the lies they would like to spew. And the media, then, or presidents would say, well, we can't leave because of this. And then the media would just run with it because the media is beholden to the establishment. Just like with Afghanistan and Iraq today, there's billions of dollars worth that was in Vietnam, whether that's with construction, whether that was with forced labor camps, whether that was with building roads and contracting out construction equipment, whether that was paying, contracting out workers and soldiers to just, monitor the situation in Vietnam, which was them invading, whether it was, chopping down whole-scale crops and timber and selling that, whether it was taking the mineral wealth in Vietnam, or whether it was completely annexing the country itself, forcing them to only deal exclusively with U.S. suppliers of aid, food, infrastructure, things of that nature. So they broke down the entire country, and then were paid to build it back up. Odd how that works. And I think that there needs to be more protest over this. not just protests, but I think there'd be more education about this. I think education is one of the key things about this because people don't understand, why we aren't leaving. They want to leave, but each side, when is brought to the table, when Trump was in office, the left wanted to leave and the right didn't. When now Biden's in office, the right wants to leave and the left doesn't. Say, oh, well, what if this happens? Or, women's rights in Afghanistan, even though the people that are committing these women's rights are the people we paid and allied with since the invasion of Afghanistan, which is not something they've talked about. Because, corporate media doesn't want you to know that they sided with, this is a true statement actually, they've sided with people that, behead women in public squares and use child sex slaves. That's a thing. Look that up under the Obama administration. They allied with Taliban leaders that had child sex slaves. So I think the more we can educate ourselves about this situation, become more aware of it, I think the more we can try to put pressure on our politicians to call it out. It seems to me that the left has been placating over and over and over and, giving lip service to the American people, but don't really want to do anything because they're beholden to the establishment. And even if, I criticize the squad a lot, and even if their intentions are purely good and they want to, and they think going along and helping the establishment is going to help the people because they think them, scratch your back, scratch my back. When the establishment clearly doesn't like the squad anyways, all they do is talk shit about them and dump on them. Nancy Pelosi consistently calls out the squad and consistently calls out AOC individually, talks about how she's a crybaby, how she's a little child and she whines, and also all that Progressive Caucus does is whine. So if they aren't corrupt, the Progressive Caucus and the progressive candidates, Democrats, are really fucking naive and stupid and just fucking lazy. So I think that's going to cover it for today. I think there needs to be more education on this and more outspokenness about this because there used to be, protests about this, but they would crack down, and that's a separate video I'm going to make. I want to make another video about, the history of crackdowns on protests and free speech in the U.S. If you look back to the beginning of the U.S., it's never been about free speech. It's about landowner rights and investor rights, which is counted as free speech, So I thought I'd get that one on my chest. I'll catch you guys later.